Let's get into the articles.
Sure.
Because with your wealth of experience, I think it's really useful to hear your analysis and potential defense on behalf of the president as you look at these articles. Here is, of course, Article 1, the abuse of power. Let me read just the core of it.
Sure.
Solicited the interference of a foreign government, Ukraine, in the presidential election.
Right.
Is the president's best defense that that's true but not impeachable, or do you have to argue that it's not true?
I think the best defense, honestly, first of all, is what articles? I mean, there aren't any articles in the Senate, so we're not having a trial, at least as I understand Senator McConnell, unless there's a change in the rules, and there's some debate about that with Senator Graham. And then the second question is, when are the articles going to get there? So
okay, that's procedure, but right. I'm pressing you on the actual substance.
Fair enough. Look, I think the best defense is that I've said for many, many months before we ever went through the House of Representatives that well-founded articles of impeachment allege crimes. I mean, it says high crime for a reason. And it seems to me that the House chose to proceed with articles that do not allege bribery, extortion, obstruction of justice, a federal campaign finance violation.
You think it would be stronger had they gone into bribery and campaign finance?
I think their view of it was that they didn't want to have to pass through those hurdles under federal statutory law in order to prove that, which leads me to conclude that they didn't think they could prove it.
Can I use a non-legal term?
Go ahead.
Are you saying they chickened out?
Look, I don't disparage the United States House of Representatives. They proceed as they deem appropriate. Now we deal with the consequences of that. So, my next procedural question also is, are they going to waive with regard to reopening the articles of impeachment relative to
While
John
I have
Bolton?
you mentioned bribery. Let me read from one other article for your analysis.
Sure.
It says the president conditioned the $391 million to obtain this improper personal political benefit. It seems to allude to bribery without using the words. And do you think that is true, or do they have to have a best defense, argue that that didn't happen? Because there's a lot of evidence that it did.
I think that the best defense is to say that the impeachment managers would not be able to prove that the aid was given in exchange for, investigations relative to former Vice President Biden and his son.
But how do you deal with the president on the White House lawn saying, I wanted them to investigate the Bidens? In other words, as a client, anyone making this case, I think you'd agree, would be better off with a president who kind of just didn't admit as much.
Well, look, there's nothing wrong about the president doing something indirectly, what he's absolutely allowed to do directly. There's no problem with the president saying through the Department of Justice, let's get a legal assistance from a foreign government with regard to a lawfully constituted investigation before the Department of Justice.
What if instead of that, though, he says, I just wanted it announced on TV so it makes them look bad?
Well, that's this whole question about, what was really being asked for here. Is it the announcement of an investigation and what you interpret from that? I mean, my interpretation.
Let me ask you this. They didn't fire Gordon Sondland, the ambassador, who said under oath that it was the announcement. He still works there. I mean, you think if their defense is that's not true, don't they have to say that and get rid of him? But
I think the better argument with regard to the announcement and the investigation is what they were trying to do was lock in the Ukrainian government's position so that they couldn't walk that back. There's nothing wrong with the president asking for an investigation and receiving some commitment and on his own or through the administration withholding aid to see what the Ukrainians do. What's illegal is expressly conditioning on it that only one will be done in exchange for the other. That's what makes it bribery, and I think that's why the House impeachment managers avoided an allegation that it constituted bribery under federal law.
We're out of time, and as you know from earlier in the broadcast, Seneca said the issue is wasting time, right? I'm out of time now. That's my best Seneca reference. I don't know if you have one.
Well, I mean, look, being serious about it, I hope we're all going to be judged at the end of this about whether or not we acted in the best interest of the country. And I do think it's time for the articles to come over for the Senate and to go through the process.
And I appreciate that and getting your perspective so everyone can hear it. Mr. Ray, thanks for coming by the beat.
Pleasure to be with you again, as always.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.